Hello, this is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business podcast. Hope you're having a tremendous day. Today we're going to talk a little bit about savings. I know the past couple podcasts we've been talking about principles of financial success, and we're going to pick up on that topic today. Just quite a few just basic financial principles, most of them personal related, many of them can spill into our business as well. And we're going to pick up on the topic today of just some things that we can do personally to help get us to the point of having some financial success in our lives. We've talked about giving. I think that was the best place to start, talking about giving, and then we moved a little bit into talking about debt. So what basically those things that really can limit us to be able to do the things that we want to do and the things that we need to do. Today we're going to talk about savings. I was reading an article this last week in regards to New Year's resolutions, and they were talking about the resolutions set in 2019. Of course, here we are about the end of January of 2020, and I'm sure many of you have made, or some of you have made, New Year's resolutions for this year. But looking back at last year, about 3/4 of people said they wanted to eat healthier. When they listed it as far as in their resolutions. Next was to exercise more. About 2/3 mentioned they wanted to exercise more. Over half mentioned they wanted to lose weight. And number 4, which was about 1/3 of the people out there, said they wanted to save more and spend less. And a lot of people, they would, they prefer to spend because spending is fun. And of course, paying off debt isn't that much fun. But I think everybody needs to have some sort of a savings plan. If we're going to get to our goals that we want to reach, whether it's in business or whether it's personally, an element of that is going to be to save. So we're going to talk a little bit about savings. We're going to talk about a savings plan. If we're going to develop a savings plan, the first thing we need to do is to know where we're at currently. And this is true regardless of what you're wanting to do as it relates to setting goals. If I'm going to set a goal, I have to understand where am I at right now, and that way I can begin to build the steps to get to my goal. Okay, and so the same thing is true when we're talking about developing a savings plan. I need to know where am I at now? Where am I spending my money? I generally encourage people to sit down and collect receipts. To sit down and collect the receipts for 30 days, take a look at it. First step into developing a good budget to understand where am I spending my money now. Then do the same thing for 30 more days, and then once again for 30 more days after that. So 30, 60, and 90 days, because most of the time we're going to encompass most of our expenses over a 90-day period. That way we can make sure that we're not missing anything. So the first step into developing a savings plan is the same step into developing a budget is to know where we're at now. Where am I spending my money? A lot of people, they go through and they spend money somewhat frivolously or almost just being somewhat aloof as it relates to their finances, where they're spending their money. Kind of going through and spending a few dollars on coffee every day, or driving through the fast food line and spending a few dollars on fast food, and that adds up quickly over the course of the month. And they get to the end of the month and they're kind of surprised, wow, I just spent $350 on fast food this week or this month. And so they can go through, they just realistically understand this is where I'm at currently. So first step is to know where you're at currently. Next step would be to build your budget. To go through identifying all of those big ticket items. We may spend an entire podcast on the topic of budgeting, both personal and business. But what are the items I need to purchase every month? Okay, make sure that those are identified in there. The items I'm going to do a little bit that may not be maybe some of the annual costs, but I'm budgeting for those costs within my budget each and every month. And then once you've kind of gone through those items, this is where I'm actually spending my money each and every month. You look through and begin to determine what can I cut. And a lot of times that cutting comes through kind of this non-discretionary type spending. So instead of going through and buying coffee every day, kind of saying, okay, well, let's make coffee at home. Okay, instead of going through the drive-through window 4 out of the 5 business days every week for lunch, okay, why don't I just brown bag it for a while? Okay, and bring my food in and eat there, and I can save some money there, because now at the point you begin to save, and then you can determine, okay, I'm able to save this money, and then take the next step of actually developing the plan. And a lot of time that plan comes into place to make sure that plan aligns with your priorities. So what do you have going on in your life? What's important to you? Okay, so what do you have coming up in the next year? What do you have coming up in the next few years that you need to begin to save for? So once you begin to develop the savings plan, you need to sit down and determine, okay, what is going on in the next year that I need to save for, and what is basically after that 1 year time frame. So developing the savings plan, I think step number one is to actually begin building an emergency fund. Dave Ramsey, probably the most popular personal finance personality out there, talks about building this emergency fund, taking that baby step one of having $1,000 in the bank. I think that's extremely important. And for a lot of people, they really can't define what an emergency is. I think an emergency should be more clearly defined. Okay, if I lose my job, if something tragic truly does happen, not that I went to Best Buy and they're having a sale on TVs and that's an emergency. No, that's not an emergency. Okay, so really developing a fund for that's truly an emergency. So start at $1,000, then build up to having one month of savings in the bank to cover all of your bills over the course of a month. Then get to the point of 3 months, and then from there, whatever you feel most comfortable with, whatever brings you the most security in the household. So step number one, build that emergency fund. Step number two, to actually develop a vacation fund. And then once again, these are short-term savings goals. A vacation fund. Most families, most individuals take at least one vacation a year. Try to determine, okay, what is that vacation going to cost us? If you're going to go to Disney, that's multiple thousands of dollars, or on a cruise, or maybe you're just going to go camping for a week. Whatever that is, if it's $1,000 or if it's $10,000, to actually begin saving today for that vacation. Next, look at your other goals. So what do you have going on in the next year? Are you getting married? Are you having a child? Okay, are you wanting to do some remodeling in the home? Okay, are you wanting to buy a vehicle in the next year? So whatever that case may be, make sure that you're developing as part of your savings plan each and every one of those items, and you're saving for those. And you have clearly defined dollar value goals as it pertains to each one of those items. And then also to fund your health savings account for medical cost. Okay, then we can transition from there into longer term goals. So maybe you're looking at 5 years down the road, you're wanting to purchase a new home. So you begin to save, you identify, okay, I need to save $50,000 for this new home purchase. So you put that as part of your long-term savings plan. You have children that you need to pay for education. For myself, I have one that's a freshman in college, one that's a junior in high school. And so one that's in freshman in college, we're spending money, and he's spending money each and every month as it relates. So we're actually spending some of our savings now currently as it relates to college. But for the one that's a junior in high school, we know this is coming up a couple years from now. We want to make sure that we're funding some sort of an education fund, whether it's an education IRA, what's called a Coverdell IRA, or a 529 plan, whatever works best for you, or just putting money into a savings account if you're definitely in the short term, to be able to go ahead and fund those education needs. And then, of course, I think the longest term for most of us is retirement. That does need to be part of your savings plan. So if your work provides a 401k, you're fully funding it. If you're self-employed, you have a solo 401k or a SEP or a simple plan, that you're fully funding those retirement accounts. So identify those short-term, long-term savings goals that you need to set, and then begin to put into place what needs to go into each one of those accounts to reach your goals. And maybe just one practical tip here. For most of us, I think it makes sense to automate the savings plan, which means that you're going through every paycheck, a portion of that paycheck, whatever that number needs to be, goes into a savings account. It all doesn't go into a checking account and you move the money. No, it goes into a separate savings account. And I think for most people, it may make the most sense to have that savings account at a separate bank. So you just can't log in and move the money as simply. You actually have to go to the bank. It's a little bit more of a painful process to pull the money out, because many times the money's out of sight, it's out of mind. The only time we're going and pulling money out of there is purposeful. So we want to make savings easy, pulling the money out to make it a little bit more difficult to make it purposeful. So just a few thoughts on savings, developing a savings plan. Hope that something in this podcast triggered a thought, something you take with you and implement into your personal life within this next coming week. Once again, this is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business Podcast. If you found value in this podcast, I would encourage you to subscribe. Have a great day.